Okay, here we go. We have our knit texture, let's say, and once again, this is simply just scanned in knit structure. Okay, it's a little bit blurry. Okay, and very simply, obviously, this might not be the correct color we're looking for. It's always best if you scan it in grey, because for some reason it's easier to place color into this when it's grey. I don't know why, it just is. Okay, so I'm just going to crop that out. That's just to make sure there aren't any white outlines or borders around it, because that can cause, when it comes to putting it in Illustrator, it can cause a tiling effect, which doesn't look very good. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to get rid of my background layer. Yep. I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to call this color, let's say. Okay. I'm going to simply go and pick a color. Let's say we can go for, well, I won't choose grey because obviously it won't show you the whole point. Let's go for a nice kind of electric blue. I'm just going to hit Shift F5, which is fill, or you have your fill tool over here somewhere. I don't use them much. I just use my quick shortcut keys. I'm going to hit OK. Okay, now obviously this is overlaying our knit structure behind us. So what we want to do is, if we go to our layers palette over here, we have a little kind of like tab here which has lots of different options in. If we go to overlay, suddenly this color will overlay our background image. Now that's a very dirty color. It's not particularly very good. It looks a bit melange. So the way to play around with this to get a better color is, if we go to our layer 1 and we go to our image adjustments, we can change the levels of it. Now, changing the levels of it allows us to kind of bring that color out of itself, but still retaining the knit structure behind it. So, let's just say, there we go, that's perfect. I'm happy with that. But the great thing is, once we've done that, we can then change our color very happily to, let's go for like a green, let's say. Just fill it. And there you go, you've got a different color. So it's very, very simple. You can play around with this. You can even add, segments of color, and it will do it quite happily. Okay, so you can play around this. It's quite interesting. You can even put stripes in, whatever you want to do. For example, let's put a stripe in. There we go, and we can put another one in here. Okay, perfect. Okay, so there's our kind of striped garment. But I'm just going to show you the color version, the single color version for now. Okay, so I'm now going to merge these down, just so it's one kind of JPEG image. Otherwise, I'm going to pull out one layer rather than both of them. I'm then going to select all of it. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to take it into Illustrator, and I'm going to paste it in. Okay, great. Here we go. So this is our new color swatch. Now, obviously, if we were to put that in there, let's zoom in a little bit. Let's send it right to the back. Okay, this is obviously way too big for our garment. It's going to be a very, very chunky garment. So I'm just going to reduce the size of it to fit better with the proportion of our garment. Let's make it a little bit bigger. Okay, that's perfect. Now, instead of me taking this in and having to, tile it and replicate it and then create a clipping mask, which I'll show you about later, there's a much simpler way of getting this color into our garment. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut it. I'm going to go to our layers, make sure it's in our texture layer, because obviously we're adding the texture. And I'm just going to go to my swatches. Now you've got this whole kind of list of little colors here that you can use that are predefined by Illustrator. So if I go to my, let's just lock those layers on our texture layer. If I click on my outline and go to my swatches, I can now start to input these colors. What is going on here? Sorry, excuse me. I think it's because our outline layer had that grey. Okay, that's fine. So let's go back in. So we now have our texture layer, and we can now start to, in our swatches, we can now start to play around with color. We can change it as much as we like. But what I want is to turn this garment with this kind of background or texture. So all I do is simply click and drag and drop it in, and I can now delete this and get rid of it. So if I go back to my texture layer, there you go, it's selected, and then to my swatches, this is my little new pattern swatch here. I can just click on it, and voila, I have this knit structure, which is fantastic. So now we have a texture in our garment. However, it still looks very, very flat and very boring and very basic. So I'm now going to start adding shades to kind of make it look a little bit more three-dimensional. Also, for some reason, our lines are looking a bit strange further away. Maybe that's just my screen. Okay, well that's fine. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a new layer, and I'm going to call this shading. Oops. Shading. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock all of my other layers, okay, apart from my shading. And now, to create shading, you have to really think about your garment and where the shade might go. So let's just get black, because black's always a good shade colour. Hang on, we haven't selected that. There we go. There we go, it's black. And I'm just going to start picking out areas that I think this garment would be shaded. So in the neckline, let's say,